Portland, Oregon. Oh, how blessed I am. Oh, it's an honor and a privilege to be a small voice in the emergence of this historic institution. Portland, are you ready to get turned upside down? Are you ready for some revolutionary Christian spirit that will connect to your humanity in such a way that we can straighten our backs up and be a force for good, given the decay and the decadence that we see in our civilization? That's why I'm here. That's what the Cultural Soul Project is all about. And I want to begin by saluting my dear brother. Where he is? I want to look him in his eyes, because he's a special brother. He's got a singular spirit. He's been shaped and molded by a profound love. It connects the intellect and the spirit. And most importantly, he's got a backbone that is rooted in a grounding that allows him to persevere and endure in the midst of the grim catastrophe so many of our brothers and sisters of all colors are living in. I'm talking about Dr. Daymond Glenn. Give it up for this brother here. Give it up for this brother, my dear brother. And when you get as old as I am, it's a beautiful thing. It's a joy to see young brothers and sisters of all colors, but for me, especially the chocolate ones. All of us have equal status and equal significance, but to see the young black brothers and sisters connecting with the best of what has come before, using their creativity and sense of innovation and novelty, but still rooted in the best of the touchstones of those great freedom fighters who came before. That's what you see when you see this brother Glenn, and that's crucial.
So the first tenet of our church is the prophetic gospel of Christ. And allow me to be a bit loquacious to kind of frame the context, and then I'm going to give you the alley for the oop. So this idea of the prophetic gospel was very important when we started the church, because we knew we wanted to do things around kind of critical hip-hop theory. We knew we wanted to do things around a critical theory on race, and we're going to talk about what that means and what that looks like. We knew we wanted to do a lot of community engagement. And a lot of people who were kind of constituents of what the Cultural Soul Project became were saying, you know, you got all this stuff going on with the law clinic, you got this stuff going on with the education, you got this. How about you create a nonprofit? And then one of the tenets of the nonprofit is the church. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not called to be an administrator of a nonprofit. I'm called to be the church. And I said, I want everything that we do to sit underneath the church, underneath what we call the prophetic gospel. And that's why when you look at even our logo, the Cultural Soul Project, people see the CSP, but it's that cross right in the middle, that it's everything sits under that cross. And so for us, this is what the prophetic gospel is. And I want to see if this makes sense, if it rings a bell to you. So the prophetic gospel for us, and you all can read about this on our website, theculturalsoulproject.com. That sounded very corporate. I'm sorry about that. It's just trying to direct you all in the right direction.
You want to communicate.
Yeah, you got to communicate.
You got to communicate, though. That's right.
So our first thing about the prophetic gospel is speaking truth to power. Then we talk about allowing suffering to speak and reshape the agenda of those in power. Then we talk about centering the voices of people who have been shaped by life on the margins, what the Bible calls the least of these, and making their plight and predicament fundamental to and a central focus of the gospel. And then we talk about responding to your contemporary moment in terms of what it can and should be, and not allowing the current circumstance to dictate your responses to it. And when I was reading a lot about Dr. West, again, I told you, I kind of fell back from a lot of the theory and the philosophy, and I wanted to know what was going on in the soul and what created the mind that we all were just blessed with today. And Dr. West said there was 3 things that grounded him in terms of his own spiritual development. Number 1 was family. Right? So when you hear him talk and you see how he honors my mother, you see how he honors my family, family was important to him. So it's 3. The second thing, he talked about this kind of Socratic spirituality that was on search and seeking for truth. And the third was this Christian spirituality that was about bearing witness to love and justice. And I had to write this one down because I didn't want to miss it. You talk about Martin Luther King so much as one of the most significant organic intellectuals of our time. Mm-hmm. And for you, propheticism is highlighting systemic and social analysis of the circumstances under which tragic people struggle. For people that don't understand what the prophetic gospel is and all the things we just talked about, help people understand why it's so important for a prophetic and radical gospel to center the voices of people and allow suffering to speak.
No. We reject truncated, idolatrous American conceptions of success in which it's all about you and your talent. No, you use your success to be of service to those who are suffering, to the least of these, to the poor, the persecuted, the orphan, the widow, the fatherless, the motherless, the elderly, those in prison. Because somewhere I read that the greatest among you has nothing to do with Alexander the Great and Napoleon. It has nothing to do with the White House or Pentagon or State Department. It has to do with the quality of service that you render to the least of these. I don't care what color, what gender, what sexual orientation. I don't care what national identity. And this is a particular calling, is not just a career. That our brother Glenn's got a calling from on high. That here in Portland, one of the most vanilla of cities in the American empire, that we can still come together across color, across ethnicity and race, because there's a deep humanity that can connect us if we have the courage to make that connection rooted in a deep love. And Martin Luther King Jr. and Brother Glenn and a whole host of others, they are shaped by a tradition, a great tradition of a grand people of black people. For 400 years have been traumatized and can teach the world so much about healing. Terrorized for 400 years and teach the world so much about freedom. Chronically, systemically hated and teach the world so much about love.
Dr. West has one of the most amazing lines in the book, Race Matters. And I remember reading this when I was an undergrad. And it kind of really reshaped how I thought about diversity and thought about multicultural work, whatever the nomenclature of was at that time. This is what you said, and this is what he says in his book. He says, because of the wounds and scars suffered in a white-dominated society, black folks have a deep-seated anger, a boiling sense of rage, and a passionate pessimism around America's will to justice. And I remember reading that, and I was like, this is profound. Because there's always skepticism and cynicism when white, socially constructed ideology becomes the arbiter of what we as people who have been shaped on life on the margins receive, right? Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, and this is an important one for me and for the church, how can we have a critique on the social construction of whiteness as an interest-bound ideology, but do it in a way that we decenter whiteness and we don't fetishize that ideology as a practice? That's my question for you.
Yes. So Du Bois writes, he says there's 4 questions for the younger generation, just written exactly for the Cultural Soul Project in Portland. How does integrity face oppression? Given our spiritual crisis, everything is for sale, everybody's for sale. All you got to do is dangle enough money, dangle enough visibility, dangle enough spectacle, and the substance drops out. We see this in our music. The black musical tradition, the greatest artistic tradition in the modern world in terms of its sustained wrestling with catastrophe and dishing out unbelievable creativity and love. What was it about those folk under white supremacist slavery that they could steal away at night in a ring shout, where it was against the law for black people to worship God without supervision, similar to the early Christians living under prosecution in a decadent Roman Empire? But raising their voices, lifting every voice, which is the very anthem of black people. Saying, and when lifting our voice, and we're going to sing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. We're going to sing Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen. There's a deep spiritual substance there. There's a moral content there that has to do with integrity.
The mission of the Cultural Soul Project is to transform society and culture through the soul of the people. We want to make sure the soul is centered as well. Dr. West, I want to say this, and Dr. West is so kind to kind of stay a little bit longer, but we're going to start wrapping this up. Depending on what day you ask me, if you ask me what my favorite movie is, you'll either get, depending on what day, you'll either get Brown Sugar or Love Jones. It just depends on what, it depends on what day you ask me.
Yes.
You know. But for today, we're going, it's Brown Sugar. All right, so, and if you've watched Brown Sugar, raise your hand if you've seen the movie Brown Sugar. Okay, so right on. One of the things that Sanaa Lathan's character would always ask people when she interviewed them was, when did you first fall in love with hip hop? That was the thing that she would always ask people. And if you came to the last Cultural Soul Project event, you know how I end my conversations. And it's not gonna stop because Dr. West is here. I'm gonna always ask people who are their top favorite 5 rappers and why. And then I give mine and we can fight on stage in front of everybody, you know, because but I wanna ask you first, who are your top favorite 5 rappers?
That's what is so significant about what is going on here in Portland. Now, it's true, a lot of people in the country haven't got the memo yet, Brother Glenn. But, when you open in the fall, and I can't wait to come back. Anytime you call me, I'm coming back. Now, I'll fly back unaided. I'm coming back. Because anywhere folk are loving the wretched of the earth, anywhere folk are concerned with taking a stand, anywhere folk are bringing folk together in the name of integrity and the honesty in the face of deception, that's second question of Du Bois, and the decency in the face of insult, and the third question of Du Bois, and courage in the face of brute force. Because let us be very clear that in the history of this nation, anybody who falls in love with poor and working people is subject to character and maybe literal assassination. And in a white supremacist civilization, black love is a crime. Black freedom is a pipe dream. Black history is a curse. And black hope is a joke. The question becomes, what are the countervailing forces that the Cultural Soul Project provides that says black love, though criminalized, cannot be eliminated? You see? And when you really love folk, I don't care who you are, you hate the fact that they've been treated unjustly. If you really love folk, you loathe the fact they've been treated unfairly, and if you don't say something, the rocks are going to shout out.
Can y'all give it up for Dr. Cornel West?
Give it up for Daymond Glenn.
Thank you, man.
And the Glenn family. Absolutely. Lord, this has been rich, man. It's been rich.